My name, as Deep mentioned, is Heather Gruda, and I am a graduate with a Master's of Science in Positive Organization Development and Change from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. I have worked with the State of Ohio Development Services Agency government and working on their Office of Technology Investments and starting to draw some of this attention to professional businesses. But as Deep had mentioned, surprisingly, spirituality is still kind of a taboo subject in our formal organizations, and it seems to be exemplary of us having an idea of how we should organize ourselves backwards. So instead of our organizations being for us, we often find ourselves in situations where we are there for the organization, and really we should be able to have it both ways. But in order to do that, it does take a certain element of having ownership of self and being willing to explore self and not just provide blame or play a victim, because you can hide amongst a group of people. So an important element of spirituality in the corporate workplace is taking a look at the higher level corporate culture and these other types of exercises and models. And but an important element of bringing a holistic spiritual experience to the whole organization inevitably boils down to the individual. So we are talking here, as Deep said, about challenging people's fundamental belief systems oftentimes, but part of the role of the work that we're doing is creating space so we can have these types of difficult conversations. So it's really a wonderful arena to introduce some of these topics and be able to speak openly about things that people feel they can't speak openly about. So yeah, it can be a sensitive subject, but is often very rewarding for most people who participate and decide to take the plunge.
It indeed is. So I remember reading this from the Center for Sustainable Businesses. I think it's a Case Western, which is headed by Ron Fry. And I think they have a very distinctive point to ask, is the purpose of people to exist for organization, or is the purpose of organization to exist for people? And
Right.
this is a very crucial aspect in terms of how do we look at entire purpose of a corporate. Is it just to make money in a short term, or is it to look at sustainable holistic value addition that they do? So how has been your experience with a lot of your clients? I understand it's not that easily acceptable yet to try and look at the soul of an organization. I keep repeating that, but I'm not sure how do you put it across when you try and speak with people? What are
Sure.
your thoughts?
Sure, thank you. I try to embody it really, again, if we're trying to make large scale changes, the changes happen at an individual level. So when working with clients, especially with any behavioral intervention, the client needs to be willing and ready themselves. So oftentimes being a consultant, we are called in to work with parties who may not have requested some of these exploratory services, but it helps. So there needs to be a bit more massaging, and the timeline can take a lot longer because it's dealing with sensitive subjects and you want to be gentle and again provide that safe brave space. But if the client system is very open and willing, oftentimes if it's more populated with women, if I can say that, there are more or people who have undergone experiences that they're willing to look at, then it goes a lot more smoothly. There have been fights, but there have been, you know, the kinds of conversations that really shift people in a profound way. So it's so unique to each person, but really it's about creating the environment that helps a client system create those conversations in that space for themselves. So we should be able to walk away and let the magic happen.
So,
um,
I understand from the readiness perspective, there are some prerequisites, but uh, what really intrigues me is I am more of a hardcore consulting approach. I look at the strategic part of the business. I look at the performance management. I look at the OD and change management areas from a diagnostic perspective to a great extent. Uh, how do we speak about things in their language? How do we try and create the resonance of looking at a sustainable business and make meaning out of it? How do we get a buy-in? What do you think really helps here?
I'm sorry, would you mind rephrasing that, just as to incorporate the discussion on spiritual topics?
Yes,
Is
I hear
that
you. Yes, that is an interest. That is one of the areas. So when you speak about introducing the topic of spirituality into corporates, it is often seen as something which is not meant for business, probably at an individual level, but not for corporate houses and business, where the whole idea is of being very strategic, to the point, action oriented. So, how do we bridge the gap? How do we really go across?
Sure. Uh, as consultants, you have a key to a large door that a lot of people don't have, even people inside of the organization. So it's wonderful to be able to utilize that and be able to create space for some of the conversations. Um, Sometimes that looks like pulling people aside to break out rooms, and they can have personal conversations on their own. So sometimes you have to be there or not. In other places, oftentimes, I've been in one place where these types of conversations were not welcomed at all, and any kinds of discussions on feelings or emotions or behavior or it was not these they are not prevalent in the industry. So being invited to be a part of the client system, the sometimes if the conversations aren't able to be upheld or invited, again, you have to kind of embody it. So a lot of times what that would look like is, if I was on site, I would take my lunch break and go meditate, or play music, or do something that invites some of that spiritual aspect to it. And it was looked at as very strange at first, and a lot of people questioned it and called attention to it. But again, that's kind of being that resonant leader, exercising resonant leadership. And if somebody needs to start making waves and nobody is going to do it, you kind of have to bite the bullet and let people see you be vulnerable. And that sparks the light inside of others. So um, inviting the change rather than forcing the change is very powerful when dealing with what we can call energy in others. So it hasn't been forcing as much as it's been trying to invite and encourage. So
So,
whatever that looks like for your client system will be very unique. So it's interesting work.
Yes, an interesting thing which comes to my mind when you speak about taking a pause during your lunch and meditating, that itself sounds very unconventional. I would say that's a simple word that comes to my mind. But
Mhm,
when we speak about a leader's office, let's say a CXO's office, it
mhm,
is always rushing in with a lot of pressure, with tough
mhm,
deadlines, with quick decision making, with running around all the time.
mhm.
how do we slow down things? How do we really create that space to be mindful of our actions and just breathe in? I mean, it's almost out of control. How do you usually advise them, or how do you guide them in practical terms?
So thank you for that. This is the catch 22 of spiritual work, is that if you need 20 minutes to meditate, and you can't find time, that means you need an hour. So ultimately what the work is coming to full understanding of yourself. And a lot of times what that looks like is the shedding away of things. So wherever you are, in an organization or in your life, if you're looking to attempt to slow things down or do some of this self-development work and understand who you are, what you want, with your whole life, but also with the organization, and how you fit in and how you can best provide for others and expect that safe space. Um, First thing first is accept that it's just like an exercise plan. Some things may need to shift around in order for you to do this work for yourself and your organization. So if you can accept that and be willing to put forth that commitment, and really what the largest thing that I've seen is that people don't fold spirituality into like the fundamental structure of an organization. So if leadership is willing to, again, embody some of it and really inject it as a part of what the organization believes in, it's kind of the trickle down effect. People will see, oh, my leaders are enacting self-care in these very profound ways that lets me be able to do it. So again, it's not even so much of the making sure that meeting times for meditation are organized, or it's about being willing to do it yourself, but also even creating the physical space. So sorry, just one more thing. A place that I was at ended up taking 2 extra rooms and setting them aside as meditation rooms or quiet, just relief rooms, which is surprisingly not common in companies. And we think we have to be busy all the time, when sometimes you need, a 5-minute nap or just to meditate for 10 minutes. And it's like you slept for hours. So just allowing the space for people to be more human and less robotic does wonders. And so I think it's the Hawthorne effect, which is where they had the factory and they had the one type of lights and the factory workers didn't like them. So they changed the lights and they said, oh, we like it. Great, thank you. And then next week they went and changed the lights back to the old ones, and the factory workers said, oh, thank you, we like it, thank you. And I said, but it's the same lights you had last time. And oh, we didn't notice, we enjoyed that someone was paying us that attention. We enjoyed knowing that we're being seen and that we're treated like humans. And really it's kind of a simple concept that's so complex in its simplicity, but takes a bit of inner
How
work.
surprising it sounds. How surprising it sounds when the moment even I think about recommending to my client that why don't you have a timeout room. uh, I don't know, the culture, probably business culture probably says that if you're sitting idle drinking coffee for too long, you're wasting man hours, you're wasting money. But I think that's what typically comes in from the so-called modern times when production and each man hour was too crucial. But things are changing now. uh,
Yes.
yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of research come out, proving things like emotional contagion and emotional labor with the mirror neurons and how our brains mirror each other. So it's further proof on being able to do the work yourself, you know, underneath our consciousness. By doing work on ourselves, we're doing work for everybody else. So yeah.
So, just something that comes to my mind, in trying to put it in pretty simple terms, what does spirituality mean? Is it simply just being mindful and meditating, or is it something beyond that which I'm not able to grasp and relate to? What does spirituality mean in your
So
terms?
that's a question that I wanted to ask the audience. So if anybody, or you know, the participants, so if anybody, you know, and I'm curious to see also whose organization includes any kind of discussion on spirituality, or, you know, is it just completely left off the table? So what does spirituality mean? And is anybody in an organization that openly has those discussions? So if
As far as my organization is concerned, I am also connected with a hospital called Bhaktivedanta Hospital. This is run by ISKCON, and we attach a lot of importance to spirituality. All our decisions are based on spirituality, and spirituality does not mean only religion. It means, you know, the basic human values and principles. Even during Corona time.
Wonderful. Mhm.
I think you went on mute accidentally. If you may just want to unmute yourself, so.
Oh,
Uh, so there is a lot of spiritual. We have a department of spiritual health where even for College of Nursing, we have introduced this. This is called spiritual healing, and it has a great impact on the people. So we are practicing this. About other companies, I don't know, but about this ISKCON family, I am pretty sure that it is being organized in any of the branches of ISKCON.
yeah.
Yeah, either.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. It's very impressive. And to see it spread like that is really, really special. Does anybody else work in an organization that incorporates spirituality, or have you had the conversations, or what does spirituality mean to you? Anybody? So,
Well, yes, one of the clients which I worked with did have a bit of mindfulness sessions once in a while. They used to have some trainers come in and have second Saturday of each month set out as meditation time, an hour each in the evening. But it really helped rejuvenate mentally. But I'm honestly not sure where was it just slowing down things to be mindful, or they never really looked at it from a very long term effect perspective. So I think the in-depth understanding would still have been pretty superficial. That's what I presume.
Hi, Ram here. In one of my previous organizations, which was a media and internet company, the senior management has taken decision that, you know, since employees are under stress, they should do something for our employees' physical and mental health. To start with, they started the gym, and gradually, apart from gym, they also hired a yoga instructor, and yoga instructor was available on daily basis for 2 hours in the evening. So whosoever would like to take yoga session, in general yoga session, or for specific problem that the employee is facing, they were free to do that, and that was also within office working hours. So I think that was really good initiative, and I can relate this with, you know, inclusion of spirituality in a corporate life in a way.
yeah, that's very cool. It's a challenging subject to not have be cheesy. A lot of times when people try to talk about these things in the organization, they'll like a lot of change initiatives, the participants are kind of apprehensive about it. They think, oh, it's something our bosses want us to do now. You know, how do I, what does this really do for me? So trying to really access the motivation, to have it be like just like your teeth or exercise, again, the daily philosophical shift that happens within an individual, I think is kind of a more fundamental challenge for the leadership right now. But
Um,
yeah.
Heather, this is Anil. I work for
Yeah,
multinationals also and Indian multinationals also. I would like to say we do not have any systematic approach towards
right, right.
spirituality, but we do have certain areas where we do believe that spirituality at place gives a lot of mental peace and concentration. It
Mm,
also helps people from working safely. It also avoids accidents. These are some of the things which are the very important requisites, and the employees do believe and they would like such initiatives to be taken up by the employers. So the companies I worked, we do have this kind of approaches, but no special everyday affair. Thanks.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
I subscribe what Anil is saying because I recollect when the Hotel Taj was attacked. Thereafter, the people were shattered, and for them, these yoga sessions and then deep breathing sessions and spirituality sessions were organized by organization, that is Tata Group, and people were benefited because they were totally mentally shattered because they had seen people dying right in front of their eyes. So they were pretty scared, and this sessions definitely help. And there is a organization in Thane called Institute of Psychological Health. They were instrumental in this, and they did, apart from the psychological counseling, they used the spiritual counseling to a great extent. I am aware of that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Heather.
So, Heather, I think I also want to try and elaborate and understand how does purpose of existence, may it be an individual or an organization, how does purpose of existence, or let's say the vision or mission statement, as we often call it in business terms, how does it fall aligned with spirituality or entire being or entire existence? What's your opinion? How have you been looking at it?
Uh, so that is a big question. So you're speaking about the ontological gap. So the gap of understanding between, how we live life, how we apply our philosophical understanding. So, gosh, I'm sorry. It's a really big question.
I hear you, because this is something truly comes to my mind when I look at something as simple as let's say a mission statement or a vision that an organization has. That is often.
Can I mention the vision and mission statement of our hospital? Mission
Please,
statement.
sir. Please. That would certainly
That
help.
will probably explain the importance. Our mission statement goes something like this: with love and devotion, we will offer everyone complete scientific and holistic healthcare service based on true understanding of the needs of the body, mind and soul. हिंदी में हम प्रत्येक व्यक्ति को आधुनिक, शास्त्रोक्त एवं सर्वांगीण वैद्यकीय सेवा प्रदान करेंगे, जो देह, मन और आत्मा की वास्तविक आवश्यकताओं के ज्ञान और अनुभूति पर आधारित होगी. I think this mission statement clearly explains how much importance we give to spiritual healing, spiritual health of the people. Yeah, Deep.
Yeah, so I think this is exactly what I had in my mind when I was trying to address to the existential question. So, for me,
Yes.
spirituality and corporate spirituality comes in a lot more in alignment with what is the purpose of existence of the organization in the first place. And I've seen a lot of organizations just put it out as a statement on the board, but then they hardly live it in their culture. So a lot of cultural change, transformation interventions that we do, it is about getting them aligned to what they actually wanted to do in the first place. Why do they exist? So that's something that comes to my mind. Heather, how do you look at it? How have you been dealing with your clients? If you can share some opinion, that would help me.
Yes. And thank you for everybody's input. It's all very helpful and welcome. The way that I tend to look at it is that we are souls and individual souls in a body, but we are connected to something larger. These larger disembodied things can be considered spirit. So when an individual has undergone work to explore, we'll say, a soul's purpose, that individual knows how to more naturally navigate life's situations. So we can even go into some research from Dr. Boyatzis and intentional change theory. A lot of it is discovering true self, ideal self, and going through these processes of establishing resonant relationships in order to evolve the self. So if we often run into ontological disconnections between an individual or a small group of people and the larger group. And a lot of it is because this work hasn't been done or they haven't looked at it. So you often have situations where there are like umbrellas of mission statements or visions, and everybody's running around trying to get under the right umbrella to stay out of the rain, but not knowing that they're helping build the umbrella, or they can have their own, or so how do you incorporate this? Things like appreciative inquiry are very helpful. So David Cooper-Ryder and Ron Fry developed a methodology that works very well in all skills called appreciative inquiry that helps create buy-in. So that and various forms of it. But one of the things that makes this type of work and these types of conversations so hard is really the confidence to look at the truth of a situation. And I mean that at the individual level. If somebody does not feel like they are a fit for the company or does not wish to accept the opportunity of providing and sharing their voice, then they are quite frankly forfeiting that opportunity and help to be able to move on to where that person, just like a flower can plant and blossom, should be encouraged. And it's about family teams. We're all humans. We're all here trying to help each other figure it out and pass on through the levels we have to pass through, and that's it, really. So it's about meeting at the heart and having truth and tears if they need to happen, but it's all love. So, but it's strength and confidence to go that deep. So that's kind of a real
that truly is resonating to great extent. I am trying to capture in my head, how do I put it in the right box? So just
Can I
speaking
add
about.
something?
Yes, sir. Please go on.
This healthcare industry, I think they are taking a lot of interest in this spiritual healing.
Yeah.
And especially the terminally ill people, that is palliative care. There it is playing a lot of role. And in fact, our punchline for the palliative care department is we conquer death. So when you try and treat them spiritually, I repeat, I'm talking spiritually, not religious, because the definition of spirituality according to me is very simple. Where religion ends, spirituality begins. So there, even we have seen the death becomes very, very easy, not only for the dying person, but also for the family. And we, the end of life care kind of a thing. So there, I think most of the hospitals now are, even in India, they are employing this technique whereby it becomes a passable event.
Mm. Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I actually have training and certifications in hospice and palliative care. And that's
Yes.
where I saw the application of a lot of the discussion of spirituality in the workplace. Really, hospice and palliative care is centered around, I guess, the purpose of why we're here, which is to discover ourselves and how we can best provide to the planet and each other while we're here for such a short time. And then how can we phase into the next phase or phases with as much love and peace as possible. And I really think there's a great awakening with the increase in the global connectivity, in the sharing of ontological and epistemological perspectives on death and being, and the East meets West conversations are certainly happening on a informal level, but to structure them into our formal systems, it's a little bit slower, but people are ready. And there's nothing really more important when, and I think by this point, we've all dealt with end of life things in some ways, and we know that that's where we're going. So if we can, in any breath, in any minute, like I'm going to start crying, but in any breath or in any minute, the more love that we can share to ourselves and each other helps smooth the pathway for everyone. So
Well,
it's exciting work, but it's hard conversations.
This actually brings me to my next question. But before I go into my next question, I think we're about 40 minutes in the session, and I would also want to keep it open for the participants to try and pitch in and ask something they have in mind. So what comes up as the next burning question to me is, I remember you once mentioned about the work that you did with a large client of Cleveland Clinic. I think they're a pretty large corporate, and you had an assignment where there was immense struggle trying to get the so-called men's way of I think you mentioned earlier that it's better to have more women and women's way of knowing, and try and approach it from a lot more humanistic perspective. But what really reminds me of that is the practical impact of being aware that you may not be able to do anything and everything at once at all times, but it is about leaving those seeds in places, and leaving out those ripples. So if you can share a little about how that experience has been, or if I am to try and speak about something that matters to me at a client tomorrow, how realistic can I be in my expectations and the ripples that I would create? So just some thought about that.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up. So I was working with the Cleveland Clinic on a project, and essentially there were about 2,000 gentlemen, and there were 4 women on the site. I was the only woman in management. So I was never in a work setting like that before, but it was very interesting. So there were a lot of things to work with, so interesting dynamics in the climate and in the client system. So one of the things that was dealt a lot with was very much the presence of machismo, like you said, and for various reasons, a predominantly male system. And just my experience and what's been observed in like corporate settings anyway, tends to be less favorable for a learning climate or the spaces for being safe to grow or make mistakes was not present. So the presence of the divine mother energy was not there. And so learning to work with what could be considered difficult systems, you do learn to perceive things through others' perspectives a lot better. One of the big hurdles that I ran into was that the apprehension for formal education. So people thought that any kind of formal education was bad. So we played a lot of games. And one of the things I did was to try to just, it's gamification and trying to observe their behavior and, like you said, plant the seeds. One of the things I would do, just as an example, is write like a term. So emotional contagion. If I tried explaining that to somebody or writing it on a whiteboard or having a formal lecture, or it would not work. It would be actively dismissed. But if I wrote it on a piece of paper and left the piece of paper in the middle of the room during a time they would have a meeting, I would watch and they'd go and pick up the paper and be, oh, what's this? Ooh, that's weird. I don't know what it is. It's inviting the spark and the curiosity inside of each individual to want to pull themselves out of themselves in whatever way possible to explore it. So it ended up being a lot more gentle and almost motherly, to work with a predominantly male system. It kind of just seemed like it needed some more love. As sorry as that, as weird as that says, but even though a lot of people fought against me, a lot of people did share a lot of very, very personal things, and it ended up being quite astounding how some people grew and ended up taking it. We had a lot of subcontractors, so taking things to their own companies and growing quite a large system. So it was cool to see, kind of like popcorn, just popcorn throughout the system, rather than just one way and everybody does it. So you have to be open to observing the effects as well as leaders. Yeah.
This is indeed pretty rich in terms of how little things like a simple piece of paper and two words can really create ripples. It's just about being that mindful about the way people think and the way people behave. I would say this simple approach has strong roots grounded in organized group psychology and the way we look at approaching people decision making and learning. So I think it does sound pretty good. Uh, I would not really want to hijack the whole conversation with a few more questions from me. I would want to give some space to someone else if they may want to ask something or want to try and understand and see how the conversation flows. So feel free to either write in the chat or speak up. She's right here for a few more minutes. So, Heather, there's another interesting thing which comes to my mind when we look at a topic so ambiguous like
Yeah.
spirituality. Is it really that ambiguous? I don't know. Or is it just simple steps that we are not used to doing in our daily practice, and it's just about imbibing them? What's your take on that? How has it been for you?
Sure. The way that it's kind of defined is more like principles, like emergent principles of individuals in a whole. So kind of just like a chain, it's as strong as its weakest link. So yeah, so with spiritual work, it is the gestalt, but yeah, the individuals need to be willing to do the work. It really it is, all you can do is encourage. We're parents to each other, really. We're siblings to each other. So yeah.
I hear you. In fact, just trying to lead to consolidation of what we've spoken for last 15 minutes or so. What really comes to my mind is, correct me if I'm wrong at rephrasing or summarizing, but then what comes to my mind is, it is about taking those little steps. It is about being mindful. It is about not looking at emotions and mindfulness as something which is out there, away from businesses, away from the hush and the dynamic quick response. It is an integral part of every human being and being, no matter whether it's in your personal life or in your professional life. In fact, more so at a leadership level, you impact many more people and many more customers and vendors and society at large. So you need to be a lot more mindful about each step and the purpose. So that's what sounds to me. And
Yes, and as leadership looking to integrate this more, particularly with elements of spirituality and soulfulness, it's creating the space to allow an individual or individuals to explore that themselves. So it's a bit more hands off, or from the leadership perspective. So, but to create that space to allow the room to grow and vent or explore this. So they
I
can
understand that.
Yeah.
So I think he's accidentally off mute, but then that's all right. So, what I also understand is an interesting part. What you mentioned towards the end was trying to do the little things, trying to send out those ripples, trying to plant those seeds, and that's a very basic thing. I think a conversation like this, what we're having right now, is planting seed. It's about giving the space to have those conversations, and that truly helps. Is something what I can think of as one of the summary points which I have from the session.
Yes.
So I think it is indeed pretty rich in discussion. So looking at another about 10 minutes or so left in the session, Heather is going to be around for a little while. If somebody wants to ask something either in chat or in person, she will stick around, and you can also reach out to her. She'll be mentioning her email address in the chat. I think I'll do that. And you can also reach out for any queries that you may have later, and it'll be good to be here. Heather, I truly thank you for it. Let's just see if somebody else has something else to ask. So, well, I have the email address in the chat for future reference as well for any queries that you may have. And yes, Heather, I thank you a lot on behalf of Samsara and all the participants for being here today. It is indeed wonderful to have this discussion. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.